Hi guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So this is going to be a little bit of a different one. We're going to try and rank every unit in the game. Now this may end up turning into being quite a long video, so we'll kind of see how it goes. But a couple of things I just wanted to talk about just before we get completely stuck into it. One, of course, this is just my opinion. Now, a lot of units have very good potential, but don't work for some people and do work for others, depending on your playstyle. And that is definitely going to be true with this. There's going to be units that I like that you're not going to like, and there's units that I'm not going to like that you think are very good. So bear in mind, it's just my opinion, but feel free to argue with me down in the comments. Do throw your suggestions of where you think have gone wrong, what should have been higher, what should have been lower, etc. And we'll kind of go through that anyway. And finally, I'm missing images for a few of the cavalry units. We'll perhaps just hop into game at the very end and just talk about the few cavalry units and think kind of where I think they go. But basically, we're only missing sort of 5 or 6 units. Other than that, hopefully, everything's here. I think there's like 68 units or something I've got loaded in. I've managed to get little images for. So, yeah, this is going to be quite a long one. But we'll try and go at some speed. And hopefully, I can remember the icon, what each image actually represents. So, first one, I think this is just an archer militia. Not a particularly great unit. I think people will pick Ironcap archers over these. I'm not sure I'm going to say F, but I think we're going to be pretty low down in the ranking for an archer militia. But then we immediately move on to what I would say is a much more interesting unit, Azaps. This is one of the Seasonal 4 challenge units. Really, really good sword unit. Certainly rivals Condottieri, one I quite regularly use in my warband build. The question is A rank or is it S rank? I think I'll go A. It's certainly a really solid unit in my opinion. I'm almost tempted to put it up to S. We may end up moving that one later on. Certainly a good one. Then we move on to the Black Dragon Archers. These are one of the premium mercenary units that you can get for silver or sovereigns in game. They give you that 10% boost to honour, unit experience, hero experience, etc. when you're in battle. It used to be higher ranked in my mind because it used to be the lowest leadership cost mercenary unit in the game, so I think that used to give it actually a place where it fitted in. I think now with the Martellatori, you know, kind of what's the point with it? Let's put it in on the D point. I suppose its benefit to save it from going in the F category is the fact that it is, I think it's only 250,000 silver, so it's probably one of the cheaper, if not the cheapest mercenary unit in the game, so I guess it's fairly affordable, so that is a good thing. So next up we have the Black Dragon Javelineers. So these are the javelin-based mercenary unit. Again, not an amazing unit, but probably one of the better mercenary units. Probably going to put them in a C, I think. Sort of a pretty mid-ranking unit. I think they're about 115 leadership, I want to say. So still pretty low leadership cost. I think they are sort of 400,000 silver, so they're getting a little bit more expensive to be able to actually buy them in game. Black Dragon Pikes. Again, I'm not really a fan of these. Then their charge is not as good as Prefecture Pikes. They're the same leadership costs. Well, actually a bit less, but not really a fan of them as a unit. They don't seem really good. I would pick the Javelineers over the Pikes, and the Pikes I think are 700,000 silver in game, so they are really expensive. If you play for a long time, yes, you might be able to afford these, but for most new players, it's going to be pretty hard to achieve. So then we move on to the Black Dragon Spearmen. So these guys are the shielded unit of the mercenary units. This is the last of the mercenary units apart from the Martellatori. And yeah, they're kind of an interesting unit, but or should we rank them better? I suppose they have more use. They have actually an element of team support, and they do have that self-heal. So I suppose they're not that bad. We'll throw them in at a C. I think hopefully that's perhaps fair. So, moving away from these units onto the Monastic Knights. Okay, quite an interesting unit. Quite a strong cavalry unit. I feel like Monastics are quite dominant at the moment, particularly in sieges and stuff. Not only are they extremely tanky, but they sort of have the benefits of quite high charge damage, one of the higher charge damages in the game, and they actually do an awful lot of damage in melee combat as well, so you can almost just drag them through units and kill quite a lot. Hopefully we'll have a video on these Monastics pretty shortly. But yeah, Monastics, kind of an interesting unit. I think I'm going to throw them in up at an A. I think that would be probably not unreasonable. So then we come to Condottieri, one of the Season 3 units. Wow, tough question. It's certainly a very good unit. Is it S material? So I think that this comes down to they're very comparable to Azaps. the benefit of Condottieri is they have a very low leadership cost, and that's something that does make them quite powerful. I don't know, if I don't put them into S rank, I mean, what really is going to be S rank material? We'll put them there. We'll put them in S rank. I'm tempted still to move my ASAPs up. And Condottieri, they're a real staple unit. Of course, there are things that beat them. And they did get a little bit of a nerf at the start of Season 4 where their push no longer pushed heroes. I mean, thank God. But they're just such a staple unit. Everyone uses Condottieri because they're just so good for so little leadership. And now on to, is that the Sea Stag or the Domain Arquebusiers? I think that's the Domain Arquebusiers. A unit I've not really played, in all honesty. Some people seem to recommend them as being sort of half decent. I've got them unlocked, but I've never built them, I don't think. Or if I have built them, I've never played them. So many units by this point, it's hard to keep track. It's certainly an interesting one. I think we'll throw them in at SC because I've heard a few people say nice things about them. But, you know, are they really the greatest Mesquite unit in the game? Not particularly. So I don't think we need to worry too much about them. Domain Arbalists. Quite an interesting unit. It used to be the highest tier crossbow unit in the game before the Prefecture. They do get the shooting through shield, so they are quite effective in that way. They do have quite a decent rate of fire, and actually can be quite damaging. Perhaps not an amazing unit, but I think probably B rank material. Do you agree? I mean, you know, they are kind of an interesting unit. So, Domain Archers. Yeah. The Domain Crossbows. Yeah, they don't get the shoot through shields in the same way, so it really kind of limits their potential, really. Not an especially horrible unit, but just a very low tier, not especially effective unit. So from that, I'm assuming these are the Domain Javelins. Yeah, they're not the Javelin Militia, they're the Domain Javelins. Quite hard to see, these logos are quite small. That probably throws the Domain Javelins as a pretty sort of not great but not amazing unit. DLC, I think really probably a D. Not a unit I'd particularly naturally pick up. So I think we'll put them down a little bit low. These look like the Domain Pikes. There's someone I think who watches these videos who's a very big proponent of Domain Pikes. So I don't think they're going to appreciate them going in D. Why wouldn't you pick Pike Militia over them? They're just not as good. Pike Militia is just far superior. It gets the stun, it gets the double hit, it's got a better brace, much higher damage, much better formations. Pike Militia every day of the week. Domain Spearmen are a more interesting unit. They're sort of a mini Spear Sergeants. They're worthy of the sort of the C rank for the fact that they do block okay, and yeah, I don't think they're actually too bad a unit, really. So, moving on from them, Falconetti Gunners. Okay, that makes things a little bit more interesting. One of the Seasonal 3 units. I don't really like them, but I do understand that they have a lot of potential. The problem I have with them is that they're very easy to get killed. You only get 10 models in a unit. They're not particularly high health. As soon as they start firing, everyone in the map knows where you are. And if I see someone firing at them, I just go and hunt them down because they're really easy to kill and they're quite a good one to kill because they're quite annoying. So I think that really hampers their effectiveness. I also find them quite hard to find good positions for. It just doesn't really suit my playstyle. So for me, I'm going to rank them as only a B. But there's going to be some people who really love Falconettis, and I'm going to rank them much, much better. So, moving on from them, we've got some Fortebraccios. Now, if this was pre-Season 5, pre-Pike nerf, these are easy S rank. You know, these would easily be up here, because they were a really dominant unit. But obviously, things have changed slightly. Fortebraccios are a lot more vulnerable now, because they've got the modification that once people get close to them, then the damage drops off basically to nothing. So it means they're a lot more vulnerable. Stalwarts can push into them a lot more effectively. I think that certainly drops them down to an A. Does it drop them down to a B? It probably does. A B to A, if there's a midway category, I think Fortebraccios would somewhere be in there. Halberdier Sergeants. Quite an interesting unit. One that I had to do a couple of videos on. First time around, I really didn't like them. But a lot of that was down to the fact I wasn't using them correctly. Then beyond that, you gave some really good suggestions in the comments, kind of got them a little bit better. Still don't love them, but they are a decent unit. I think they're solid B, or is it an A? Yeah, solid B for me, I think, on the Halberdier Sergeants. Ordinary Halberdiers, a more diminished version. think an easy C for those guys. So moving on, that we get to Imperial Archers. Quite a nice unit. I quite like the Imperial Archers. I'm going to have a sip of coffee before I completely dry up. Quite like the Imperial Archers because they have really high penetration. Makes them one of the more damaging archer units, particularly against higher tier stuff. I think that kind of makes them an interesting choice. So I'm going to throw them up in an A rank. I'm going to throw my ass upstairs. Right thing to do. Imperial Muskets. We just done a video on these. And I'm almost tempted to revisit them again almost straight away because assuming this video, depending on which order this video comes out on, you may or may not see this. It may have already happened, but it probably won't. It was just done the video on the Imperial Muskets. A lot of people recommended going the bottom line as the better route when I went the top line. So again, a little bit like the Halberdier Sergeants, it might be one that really I should be having another look at to see if we can do better with the bottom line. Maybe I didn't explore them properly the first time. But happy to put them on the A rank. Imperial Javelineers. Now, probably going to be a controversial one here for me. I don't like them. Everyone does. Everyone says they're the best Javelin unit, generally speaking. Javelin Sergeants, every day of the week for me, are the clearly superior unit. And we did a video on this. It's the one unit type where I almost disagree with all of you on, because I don't think Imperial Javelins are all that much the cut up to be, and I'm going to drag my Javelin Sergeants up to my S rank. Love my Javelin Sergeants. So, yeah, a lot of you are going to disagree with that one, but for me, Javelin Sergeants are just the clearly superior unit, and they just work so much better. Imperial Pikes. I don't use them that much, but they are clearly a dominant unit. They have abilities that they're the only unit in the game to have them. That advance is just key. It's so useful in territory wars. Everyone uses it. The only thing that truly stops cavalry, it's the only thing that can truly push a corner in that sense. You can't really not use Imperial Pikes. They're just such a dominant unit. So then we move on to, is that Imperial Spear Guard or is that Ironcap Spears? So quickly check the icon inventory. It's Imperial Spear Guard. Well, then where are the Ironcaps? Oh, that must be the Ironcaps there then. Okay. Imperial Spear Guard. The most tanky shield unit in the game. Obviously, its dominance has been brought into question a little bit by Season 5 with the Stalwarts. I still think it's kind of different from the Stalwarts. It does have the self-heal. It's an all-round more tankier unit. Just that Stalwarts are very frontally tanky. I still think it's an extremely important unit in the game. So I'm quite happy to throw that one in at an A. Then we move on to them. I think that's Incendiary Archers. A unit that I probably want to revisit really now with all the fire changes we've had. Could be kind of interesting. I think I'm happy to throw them in on a B without too much question. They are quite an interesting unit, particularly for a low tier unit. So next up we've got Iron Reapers. Kind of a strange unit. Used to be really, really dominant back in the day. They used to have a very impressive charge. It was almost like a cavalry charge. Went through absolutely everything. And they've gone through quite a series of nerfs. I mean, they needed it for what they used to be, because they used to be extremely ridiculous. But nowadays, they've just been nerfed too much. They're really quite a shadow of their former selves. They are tanky, but how effective really are they? They can be in these situations. I don't think they're really a dominant T5 unit anymore, to be honest. I think they're kind of not really what they once were. Ironcap Archers, not a great unit. Kind of tends to get fairly well reviewed for a low tier archer, so I think we'll throw them in at C. Not an amazing unit, but, you know, could be worse. What on earth are they? Is that Ironcap? I think that might be Elite Ironcap Arquebusiers. Kind of an interesting unit. They actually have their own little place. I quite like these guys in a strange way. They're really hard hitting for such a low tier unit. They do kill heroes quite effectively in the right situations. So, yeah, we'll throw them in at C. I don't think that's necessarily unjust. Ironcap Spearmen. Kind of an interesting unit. I don't particularly rate them. Are they C or D? I think is probably the question for me. Throw them in at C. Let's be generous. Let's be generous. So moving on from them, I guess these are, given we're all in Iron Caps, these are probably Iron Cap Swordsmen. Kind of looks like it from the little mini logo. So you'll see me craning forwards on on the webcam all the time. It's just really hard to see from this sort of distance. I quite like these Ironcaps. I really like them actually. They have a really nice charge, really good at hero killing. Quite an interesting unit. Yeah, I rate them well. I think they're an easy B for such a low tier unit, particularly one I think people get given for free at the start now when creating a new account as well. Janissaries, interesting unit. One that's actually done better over time than it probably did initially. I think initially it wasn't particularly well rated, and yet we see them, I would not say more and more, but they've stuck around. People haven't got rid of them like a lot of other seasonal units that aren't a lot of good. Because they're an interesting unit. They are a really good hero killer. The damage is really high. They're quite accurate. They are a little bit of a pain to set up. I think they're an A. I think that's not unreasonable to rank them as an A. What an interesting unit in my opinion. Javelin Militia, not a unit I've really played. Don't really know all that much about them, so we'll throw them in at the D rank, I think. Kriegsrat Fusiliers. What an interesting unit. Again, another nice musket unit. One that I rate quite a lot. Really quite accurate. Really suffers from low ammunition, though. That's kind of their big drawback, which probably prevents them from being an S rank unit. So I think we'll probably throw them in over a kind of an A. See how we get on with them there. Moving on from that, what is that? Have a look on my list. Levy Bowman. Wow. Yeah. Well, should we F them? Since we've not put anything else in there. Martellatori. Okay, probably one worth talking about a little bit. Really interesting unit. 30 leadership. The lowest premium mercenary unit by a mile in the game. Does cost 700,000 silver to buy, but basically peasants. Obviously pretty useless as a combat unit. Okay, they do blunt damage, which is as best you could pick. They do get a few hits, but generally speaking, you know, they're not putting up a great deal of opposition to anyone. But for 30 leadership, to get that 10% bonus, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. They can fit into almost any warband build. You can almost always make room for them. Such a key unit. Really helps you progress so much quicker in the game. Probably not one necessarily you're going to be aiming for as a newer player, because you're not going to have that level of silver unless you're prepared to throw quite a lot of money at the game, because they're disproportionately expensive in terms of sovereign to silver cost. So I think it's definitely worth trying to get them for the silver cost. As a new player, people might be more inclined for the Black Dragon Archers because only 250,000 for the same 10% bonus. But once you're getting into the game properly, a really sort of must-have unit, I would say, are the Martellatori. Men at Arms. Kind of an interesting unit, one that's obviously now being overshadowed by the Paladins with the upgraded version. Just going to throw them in at the B point, I think, to be honest. They're a decent-ish unit. I like them, don't love them. Pretty average across the board. Kind of now overshadowed by the Paladins a little bit. Namcan Archers. I mean, really, it's got to be an A, hasn't it? Probably the most dominant archer unit in the game. Easily the most played archer unit in the game. Huge stacks of bleed. Quite low leadership cost. Decent amounts of ammunition. Decent rate of fire. 32 men in a unit, so decent unit size. What isn't there not to love? A real staple unit in most people's warbands, and one that you just see over and over and over again. Palace Guards. I did a video on these. Some people were bigger fans of them than I were. I didn't really like them. They're okay. They're a decent tanky unit, but their damage isn't that high. Defensively, they are quite tanky. But people said, yeah, you know, you can use them in a shield wall, etc. But the problem with that is I feel if I'm going to use them in a shield wall, then why not just bring a shield unit? And that was kind of always my problem with them. I felt they didn't really fulfill any role well enough. So for me, I think they're going to be down in the C. Not a huge fan of them. Although, admittedly, some people do get on with them a lot better than I do. Pavese Crossbows. One that I have maxed out at level 30 unit. Interesting end of seasonal unit for season 3. Used to be very, very dominant. Certainly slipped quite a lot since then, I think. Although they do get access to this plus 23% rate of fire crossbow doctrine now with the tutorial purple doctrine that you can get access to. But I think they've been nerfed down quite a lot from what they once were. So I think they're sort of an upper mid-tier unit now. Good, but not the greatest unit in the game. Kind of if that's what I'm sort of picking, I think probably where about I'd place them. Pike Militia. Yep. Easy S. Best low tier unit in the game. Great stun, great damage, great formations, good unit stack. Okay, they're quite weak, but for 110 leadership, every player in the game should be having a Pike Militia. I'm the biggest fan of Pike Militia. Yeah, big S for them for me. Easily one I'd be picking kind of in every Warband build. What are they? They're going to be, are they a Vanguard Archer? Let's have a look. Check the list, check the list. Can't find the list. Oh, they're Prefecture Archers. Oh, okay. Oh, we've not even come to the Vanguard yet. Prefecture Archers used to be, and this is way pre-seasonal, pre-Rattan update. This is over a year ago now. Prefecture Archers used to be a hugely dominant unit. Their rate of fire with arrow rain was crazy. And that was at a time when getting to higher tier units used to be a lot more expensive in honour. Unlocking Iron Reapers was like 250, 300,000 honour. So no one had super high tier units in the same way. And these guys, okay, their penetration wasn't great, but their rate of fire, the animation couldn't even keep up with their arrow firing maneuver. So these guys just shot insanely quickly, did tons and tons of damage. But have obviously since been nerfed quite a lot, down and down and down, particularly on their penetration, making them quite a lot weaker. Really, it's dropped them to a B or a C. Let's throw them in on a B. I wonder what happens if we run out of room here. But yeah, they're really not quite what they once were. So, Prefecture Guard. Where are we going to rank these? Interesting unit. One, some people are really still big fans of. Kind of understand why. They do a lot of damage. Personally, I feel they're worse than Condotarian Azaps. Some people still really, really like them, though. Once you start to get all the upgrades on the unit tree, they do get quite a lot better. There's some quite big upgrades for them to have. I think we'll throw them in at an A rank. Or do we throw them in at B? Oh, it goes down a level. B or A? I'll go B. Some people are going to disagree with that. Understandable. For me, I don't really use them that much. They could be an A ranking unit, but certainly not an S in my opinion. So I'm assuming this is the Prefecture Pikes. Obviously, we've just done a video on these. Fun unit, quite enjoyable, quite fun to kill enemy heroes with. But it's not an amazing unit. In reality, it has its moments, but it's a little bit niche. And fun as it is, you can't really be saying it's a super high tier unit. Rattan Marksmen, again, quite an interesting unit. They do get the addition of fire to their crossbows. Insane rate of fire, but just very low damage. Again, quite a fun unit to play. Quite effective at burning these Rattan crossbows, actually. But realistically, is it a game-changing unit? Not really. It's a C, it's got to be. Then, what the hell are they? They're going to be some sort of pike unit. Oh, they're Rattan Pikemen. I've not really looked at all that much. They get poison damage on their spear stabs, which is kind of interesting. One that I'm actually very, very loosely leveling slightly. We will have a video on these guys at one point, because I'm kind of curious to what their poison damage was like. But realistically, I don't think they're going to be changing all that much, kind of at the moment, to be honest. Rattan crossbows used to be a very dominant unit. Used to be pretty crazy, insane accuracy, insane rate of fire, very high damage. Got quite a heavy nerf. They're still an effective unit, but they aren't the dominant unit like they once were. You don't see them in field battles quite the same way. It used to be field battles used to be 7 sides of Rattan crossbows, and everyone just shot each other. They're sort of a much diminished, but still fairly decent unit. Rattan round shields, yeah. Not interested. These are probably the Rattan Bowmen, since we're on the Rattan update. Again, poison damage vastly overshadowed by other archer units, really. Yeah, they're just not really that good. I mean, when you start to compare them to things like Namkhans, they're just so inferior that they're really an obvious non-pick. So, easily my most hated unit in the game, the Mercenary Unit, the Sea Stag Death Dealers. That's a definitive F. They couldn't hit a barn door if it was 5 meters in front of them. Utterly abysmal unit. I absolutely hate them and everything about them. So yeah, easy F for the Sea Stags. Super High, one of the new Season 5 Cavalry units. Okay, kind of an interesting unit. I'm not sure that effective. I think people thought they were going to be effective. I don't think they really are. I think they struggle to really charge to anything. Okay, their trample can be good if you can catch a unit on its own. How often does that happen? Realistically, they always seem to just get stunned and killed quite quickly in my experience. So, for me, probably just a B rank on that unit. Serfs, presuming that's a normal serf. I think it is. Serfs, well, where'd you put serfs? They have their uses. Obviously, the ultimate resource collection unit. Once you get them to level 7, I think it's down the bottom tree. These have the highest labour of any unit in the game. So I run a 5 stack of serfs when you're out collecting, if you're in somewhere safe. So, yeah, it actually has quite a lot of uses. Combat-wise, perhaps a little bit more limited, but quite a utilitarian unit, so quite an easy C there, I think, for them. Sealadars. Okay, one of the Season 4 max level units. I didn't quite max mine out. I think mine were 24, something like that. We did do a video on them just at the end of Season 4. Quite an interesting unit. Wasn't as good, I think, as everyone was expecting. But once you sort of get into the playstyle a little bit of them and start to be able to cycle your abilities, can be quite effective. A little bit niche in some situations. Good, but not amazing. Probably a B rank for me. I think to consider if you were to put them up, are they really as good as Monastics, Imperials, Imperial Archers? Probably not. So that's why I think B is probably a fair ranking for them. Spear Militia. Again, quite an interesting unit. One that actually I quite like for the leadership cost. Quite tanky, quite a decent unit for its cost. Quite an easy B rank, I think, there for a low tier spear unit. Actually, not all that bad. Then we move on to Spear Sergeants. Well, they're going to get overshadowed a little bit by the Stalwarts. They do still have the benefit of Cover Commander, which some people are really going to like. So I suppose that's a positive. But for me, probably going to be a B for the Spear Sergeants. A decent but not amazing unit. Not now anyway. If we were doing this a year ago, I think Spear Sergeants would probably be S ranked as one of the key units. But nowadays, they are diminished quite a lot from what they used to be. Squires. Yeah, I'm not a huge Squire fan. Good health, good damage for what tier they are, and at the time they were quite good. But again, we have condos now, we have ASAPs now. They've just been sadly diminished a little bit more and more as sort of power creep has increased the value of these sort of units at this tier, these assault units. And I don't think Squires have really kept up with the game and just aren't really that good anymore. Sword Militia. Yeah, no one uses Sword Militia. Is that Tenant Farmers? Yeah, I mean, they're pretty horrible, aren't they? No one's really going to be a fan of Tenant Farmers. So, Tercios. I really like Tercios. Not everyone does. So there seems to be they're a little bit Marmite, it seems, Tercios. That very just an English thing or British thing, Marmite. Is everyone else going to get that analogy? You either love them or you hate them. If anyone's got this far in the video, maybe you'll know if you recognise the Marmite analogy. I love them. I love their tankiness. They've got almost 9,000 hit points, like 800 piercing defense. Really hard for enemy longbows to kill them, or enemy range to kill them. They do a reasonable amount of damage. Okay, they're not super accurate, they're not super damaging, but once you get them to level 30, they do actually get quite a bit better. There's a sudden point where they seem to improve quite a lot, sort of midway through. And I think they're well worth it. I'm not going to rank them S, but I think they're an easy A for me. But that's certainly probably going to be one that quite a few of you probably aren't going to like because you hate the Tercios. Still one of my favourite units of the games. Yep, Seregs are going in the S slot. Do they deserve it? I'm not sure. Possibly not. They are a really fun unit. I really like them. They're like a mini Reapers when Reapers were what they should have been. They have a really nice charge on the Seregs. They have a really nice tight formation. They do blunt damage. They hit quite fast. They hit through block. And yeah, the charge just does a lot of damage. Where Seregs fail is in group fights. But if you can put a situation where you're one-on-one, my Seregs versus, I don't know, some condos, or versus a unit of shields, or versus a unit of men-at-arms, I'm confident that I can win with my Seregs, because that sort of situation, as long as I can get my charge off, then I'm fairly confident I'll kill half the unit in the charge. And then because I'm already amongst them, that blunt damage just absolutely cuts everything else to pieces. Seregs are a really nice unit for me. One of my best ever games I've had with these units. So, yeah, easy S rank for me, but probably not for a lot of people. The grenade guys, the Militia. Yeah, these guys. D or C? That's not that bad. C. I mean, yeah, they're not an amazing unit, are they? They have their occasional decent moments. As someone on my house was telling me, Current Castle is quite a good one where you can get above the dip on the A point. Quite fun for throwing in at what is going to normally be quite a clustered group of enemies. but it's quite one-off. They're very easy to kill. They often get hunted by enemy range because they're so easy to kill. Realistically, are they a very useful unit? Not most of the time. They have occasional moments, but generally not for me. Flamethrower dudes, well, we don't really know. I've dabbled with them very briefly on the PTR server. You probably saw some of the videos back, you know, when we had access to the PTR. I think they're going to be an interesting unit. I think they're going to come in sort of around a B. They are quite fragile. It's quite a small unit. They're going to be quite easy to lose. In the right situation, they are going to do quite a bit of damage, though. So if they can be protected if you're playing with a team, then I think they are going to be quite a worthwhile unit. The Sarmatian Stalwarts. Okay. I think they're probably worthy of an A rank. They are very, very tanky from the front. They do have a really nice brace. They are quite effective. They are weak when you get round the back, and if you get them in the wrong sort of situation, I think they're quite an effective unit. That leads us onto the Paladins. See, this is where now I'm considering demoting my men-at-arms. I think I'll probably put men-at-arms down to a C, because I don't think these Paladins are worthy of an A rank. They're good so far. We'll have a video on these very shortly, hopefully. They're good. I like them. They're not the greatest unit in the game, but I do feel they are an improvement over the base men-at-arms. So finally, these must be the Vanguard Archers. Yes, they are. Yeah. Don't like them. Longbows. I do like these. Quite a niche unit. Very much an anti-range unit. I enjoyed my longbows. We did a video on them a couple of weeks ago. Really quite a fun little unit to play. Really long range, really accurate fire, really hunts down enemy range because they've got that high damage, high penetration very, very effectively. Yeah, quite a fan of those longbows, so definitely an A ranking for me. I'm guessing this is Village Watchman. It is Village Watchman, not one really I'm going to be picking. Finally, Woodcutters. They are a bit better. They're still not the greatest unit in the game, but I think they're probably worthy of just being nudged up to a C rank. So that really concludes most of my units so far. Let's just quickly hop into game and have a quick look at the last couple of cavalry units, and then we can really conclusively round this up as the ultimate unit guide. So this video is obviously going to be a pretty epic length, so let's just get on to the final couple of units that we've got to do. Let's head over to the cavalry tree. Obviously we've done the Rattans and the Chivalric. So moving along pretty quickly, Ironcaps, obviously a pretty awful unit. They're going to be pretty low down, probably an F ranking. Ironcap Scout Cavalry do actually have their own place because of their extreme speed. They seem to do collision damage. Probably used to be a lot more dominant. Probably going to be sort of a C or a B rank probably for these guys. Courtiers probably more C, D. Then we quickly kind of move on to a lot of the mid-tier cavalry. Kind of really isn't really up to a great deal. Maybe Prefecture Heavy Cavalry for their speed is probably the best one of the lot. Probably in a C. The other two are probably going to be D ranking. They're just not really here or there with in terms of kind of their effectiveness as a cavalry unit. Then finally, moving on down from the list, Cataphract Lancers used to be really amazing with their United Charge. Used to be a very good unit. Suffered quite a lot in some of the changes that got made. Really probably a C ranking for now, not really what they used to be. Winged Hussars have their quite unique place, probably an A ranking. Probably not an S, but an A for me. Kind of levelling them a little bit at the moment. But they beat any other horse in a charge. They are the ultimate charge. Plus they have the long lancers. So they beat pretty much a lot of pike units. And once they get that uninterruptible charge, they become very dominant in that sense. Possibly an S rank unit. Winged Hussars, probably the best tiered cavalry unit at the moment. Certainly very effective. Up there with the monastics and the Keshigs at the moment. Fire Lancers, I don't think they're all that amazing. I think they used to be very good. Of course, they get their basically muskets on sticks, so they do a chunk of damage there, but it quickly diminishes off. So I just don't think they have the same level of effectiveness as they used to have. So yeah, Fire Lancers for me probably around the C or the B ranking, but not all that amazing anymore. Anyway, hopefully you kind of enjoyed this video. If you want to make your own ranking, I'll put a link to the ranking tool down below so you can all have a go and compose your own if you want to. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Feel free to disagree with me down in the comments. If you've made it to the end, well done. This is probably going to be quite a long video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I shall see you all on the next video.